Good morning, seventh graders. Welcome back to Mr. Muller's online distance learning seventh grade science class. It is week 5 of distance learning. Okay, so we're past a month here, and it is April 27th, the week of April 27th through May 1st. We're going to talk about some things schedule-wise this week, assignments, maybe last week, this week, a few other miscellaneous things, and then we will get into the assignment for today, and I will read pages 84 through 89 in the textbook. Okay, so today, what is a plant? That is the assignment. We're starting a whole new unit. We started this last Thursday when you watched your quick little Edpuzzle video. A quick little Edpuzzle video about plants. Okay, so we're going to read the textbook about that, and we're probably going to spend, I would say, 2 weeks at most on plants. So we'll spend this week, and then next week I'm thinking by the end of next week, Thursday, there'll be a miniature or shorter plants test. Okay, so that's kind of the schedule coming up. So this week we'll read from the textbook a couple times. I think we're going to watch, starting on Wednesday, we're going to watch like a long documentary on Edpuzzle. It's probably going to be about an hour long, so you don't have to watch it all in one, but you may have to, considering it won't let you go back to that spot. That's why I'm giving you 2 days to do it. And it is kind of goofy video because the video is great, but the background is like cars and stuff. I think that's the only way they could put it up on Edpuzzle. But the video is great. And I think it's My Planet, or maybe it's Life, but it's all about plants, and it's really interesting, and there'll be a bunch of questions to answer along with that. Okay. So last week we wrapped up our microorganism unit. We took our big test on Wednesday. Like I said to several students, not today, but this week will be an opportunity. There'll be opportunities to do retakes. Okay, and I'll make that announcement very soon, okay, and what that's going to look like. A lot of you did a really nice job on that, so keep up the good work. After we do our plants unit, we'll move on to our animal unit, and we're going to talk about the differences. We're going to kind of break down animals into 2 big categories: invertebrates, invertebrates. Invertebrates means not having a vertebrae or a backbone. And then, of course, vertebrates meaning having a backbone. And so that's kind of the 2 major ways that we will break down animals. And, of course, you have your bugs and spiders and insects and stuff. Those are invertebrates, crabs and lobsters. They don't have backbones. But they're very important. There's lots of different kinds of them. Lots of different kinds of those. And then you, of course, have your vertebrates, which are the animals you know all and love, which are, and even the extinct ones. You go dinosaurs, you have your lizards, your amphibians, you have reptiles, you have birds, you have mammals, things like that. So, and then by the end of the year, last week of May, June, or first week of June, we're probably going to do some project related to the zoo trip, since we won't be going there. So we'll try to do some online virtual zoo project. Okay. Other than that, I just want to welcome a new student, Lucy. She's going to be in my second hour class, so welcome, Lucy. And hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And she will be in my advisory too. So look forward to her joining us on Wednesdays on Google Hangouts. Okay? Other than that, most of you are doing a really excellent job of getting your work in on time. And of those people getting your work in on time, most of you are scoring fairly well on your assignments. Okay? Whatever assignment I give you, you guys can use resources you have at your hand. If you need to use Google, you can use Google. If you prefer to use the textbook, because that's where I get the questions from, guys. I read all the pages, then I take the questions right out of the textbook. And I come up with them from the textbook. So I don't just come up with them out of my head most of the time. So use your textbook as your number 1 resource. But of course, if you need to use Google or other things like that to help you answer some questions, please do that. Okay. But for those of you that aren't getting your assignments on time, you can kind of see a month into school how things start to pile up very quickly. Because if we were in class, you'd have things to do every single day in science class, but you wouldn't necessarily have homework every single day or have an assignment due the next day and grade it and put it in the grade book. Okay, so this is just a little bit different. You can see even more so some of those students who aren't getting their work done on time. It's just piling up and piling up. And for those students that are getting your work done on time, don't fall into that habit of just stopping all of a sudden because we're a month in. Okay, we still have about a month of school left. It's going to go by quick. It's 4 weeks. Okay, so just get all your work in, do your best. All right, enough of that. We're going to go to page 84 in our textbook, and we're going to read about what is a plant. So if you'd like to skip forward on this, you certainly can. Make sure you watch, I forgot to mention, Mystery Science Monday. Again, these are not required. This is not an assignment. You can see the difference here. These little clipboards is assignment. This little sticker here in this square surrounded by a circle is just material. So this is view material. This says view assignment. You don't have to turn in or submit material. That's just something for you to look at. Again, Mystery Science Monday, not required for anybody to do. If we were in class, obviously I would show the video, but it's about why birds lay eggs in the springtime. Okay. So what is a plant? I'm just going to pop this open. I'm not going to go through all these questions, but I'm just going to have it on in the background while I read. Okay. Learning targets. What characteristics do all plants share? And what do plants need to successfully live on land? According to science, the first living things on Earth developed in the ocean, and then they moved on to land. And then eventually, at some point, plants were able to move on to land. So how were they able to do that? Really, what made them successful? I'm going to skip the My Planet Diary, but it's talking about gardens growing for schools, and I think that's very important. And of course, we are very special, and we have a wonderful garden made and procured by the FFA. So pretty cool stuff. What characteristics do all plants share? Which organisms were the ancestors of today's plants? In search of answers, biologists studied fossils, the traces of ancient life forms preserved in rock and other substances. Okay, the oldest plant fossils are about 400 million years old. These fossils show that even at that early date, plants already made many adaptations for life on land. So they think this is one of the main ways how they find out how things lived a long time ago, and maybe they're not around anymore, but we can kind of look at some ages at when they lived, but also some life forms that are now extinct. Okay, we look at them in the form of fossils, and you're thinking to yourself, how could there possibly be a plant fossil? Because whenever you find a fossil, it's a bone, right? You see the skeleton of a T-Rex, for instance. Well, you can also find fossils as outlines. So between a rock, you can break it apart, the archaeologists or whoever's working at it, and you break it apart and you see a form of a plant. The plant's not actually there. The physical form of the plant's not there. Any remnant of the plant is not there, but it was pressed into this rock or mud or whatever at some point when it was softer, and then when it hardened, you can see the outline. And that actually is very effective in seeing some of these ancient life forms. Page 85. And exactly what I'm talking about, there's a picture of them. Better clues to the origin of plants came from comparing the chemicals in modern plants to those in other organisms. Biologists studied a pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a green pigment found in the chloroplasts of plants, algae, and some bacteria, so it's found in their cells. Land plants and green algae contain the same forms of chlorophyll. Further comparisons of genetic material clearly showed that plants and green algae are very closely related. Today, green algae are classified as plants. So green algae in itself is not technically a plant. So like red algae and brown algae are not plants. They're protists, right? But green algae is, okay? And there's many, they're like, how do you figure that out? Well, they did some studies about what they have inside of them. Like the chlorophyll is the same in the chloroplasts when they're doing photosynthesis, which is the plants do and the green algae do. But also now when we have our advanced genetic technology, we looked at the DNA sequencing, the codes, and they were very similar. So we knew they were closely related. Members of the plant kingdom share several characteristics. So if you remember from the beginning of the year, we talked about the different classifications of living things. King Philip cried out for goodness sake. That was one of my ways to figure that out. So kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Okay. Kingdom, plants have their own kingdom. Members of the plant kingdom share several characteristics. Nearly all plants are autotrophs, meaning they make their own food. Organisms that produce their own food, with the exception of some green algae, all plants contain many cells. So some green algae may be unicellular, but almost all plants are multicellular, complex organisms. In addition, all plant cells are surrounded by cell walls. Okay, we learned a lot. We talked a lot about that when we compared our plant and animal cells and made our models about them. All plant cells have cell walls and chloroplasts in them, where animal cells do not. Okay, plants are autotrophs. You can think of a typical plant as a sun-powered food-making factory. Sunlight provides the energy for this food-making process called photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, a plant uses carbon dioxide gas and water to make food and oxygen. Okay, and then I'm just going to read this compare and contrast. How do you think the ancient environment of the leaf and the fossil differed from that of the modern leaf in the pictures below? Well, for example, the ancient environment would not have been exposed to human-caused pollution. For instance, there would be different animals and plants around them. But you can see how that imprinted on that rock, and we can kind of see, and we can take the age of the rock and a few other things to figure out kind of the age of that fossil. Page 86. Plants are multicellular. Except for some green algae, all plants are made of many cells. No matter how large or small a plant is, its cells are organized into tissues. Tissues are a group of similar cells that perform a specific function in an organism. Of course, we know from tissues, we go cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, and into the whole organism. Plant cells. Unlike the cells of animals, the plant cells are enclosed by a cell wall. See figure 1. The cell wall surrounds the cell membrane and separates the cell from the environment. Plant cell walls contain cellulose, a material that makes the walls rigid, allows them to grow upwards, makes them strong. Because their cell walls are rigid, plant cells look like small boxes. Cell walls make apples and carrots crunchy. Plant cells also contain many other structures. Chloroplasts, which look like green jelly beans, are the structures in which the food is made. A vacuole is a large storage sac that can expand and shrink. The vacuole stores many substances, including water, wastes, and food. A plant wilts or crumples, falls over, when too much water is left its vacuole, starts to dry out. So let's review. Assess your understanding. Almost all plants make/do not make their food. What do you think? Obviously, they make their own food. What is the function of the cell wall? Well, it separates the cell from its environment and allows it to grow rigidly upward. It helps to keep it strong, right? Or else the plant would kind of fall over and it'd be more like a non-vascular plant, which we'll talk about in the next chapter part that we read about some of these that grow sideways, like vines and stuff like that. But it helps them grow strong. What do you think happens to a plant cell if the plant is given too much water? The vacuoles. It's just as bad to give a plant or any living thing too much water versus not enough water. Okay? And they will not be able to hold all the water and they may explode. The cell actually may explode. Page 87. What do plants need to live successfully on land? Imagine multicellular algae floating in the ocean. The algae obtain water and other materials directly from the water around them. They're held up toward the sunlight by the water. Now imagine plants living on land. What adaptations would help them meet their needs without water all around them? So of course they need water. So what do? For plants to survive on land, they must have ways to obtain water and other nutrients from their surroundings, retain water, and then support their bodies, transport materials, and then reproduce. So they need all those things, and they need water. Just a second, bud. Obtaining water and other nutrients. Recall that all organisms need water to survive. Obtaining water is easy for algae because water surrounds them. To live on land, however, plants need adaptations for obtaining water from the soil. One adaptation is the way plants produce its roots, as shown in figure 2. Plants must also have ways of obtaining other nutrients from the soil. Retaining water. By the way, we're on page 88. When there is more water in plant cells than in the air, the water leaves the plant and enters the air. The plant could dry out if it cannot hold on to water. One adaptation that helps a plant reduce water loss is a waxy waterproof layer called the cuticle. Okay, so it's not the cuticles that you have on your fingers, right? You can see the cuticle on the leaf in figure 3. So take a look at the cuticle. It's a waxy substance that holds in water. Support. A plant on land must support its own body. It's easier for small, low-growing plants to support themselves. In larger plants, the food-making parts must be exposed to as much sunlight as possible. Cell walls and tissue strengthen and support the large bodies of these plants. Transporting materials. This is very important. A plant needs to transport water, minerals, and food and other materials from one part of its body to another, right? We have circulatory system and other things, endocrine system to help do that. What do? Well, in general, water and minerals are taken up by the bottom part of the plant, while food is made in the top part. But all the plant cells need water, minerals, and food. In small plants, materials can simply move from one cell to the next. Larger plants need a more efficient way to transport materials from one part of the plant to another. These plants have tissue for transporting materials called vascular tissue. Vascular tissue is a system of tube-like structures inside a plant through which water, minerals, and food move. Okay, you can see this in figure 4. I've actually done this in class, kind of show you how I put the colored, I believe it was red, in water, and you could see the next day some of the plants that I put in there, their leaves and stuff were red. It's kind of cool. Reproduction. For algae and some other plants, reproduction can only occur if there is water in the environment. This is because the sperm cells of these plants swim through the water to get to the egg cells. Land plants need to have adaptations that make reproduction possible in dry environments. Okay, so assess your understanding. What is a cuticle? Cuticle is a waxy, waterproof layer on a leaf that helps plant reduce water loss. Describe the pros and cons of being a tall land plant. Tall land plants have the ability to support themselves more than shorter plants, but they get more sunlight if they are taller than the plants around them. Now I know that to live on land, plants need to obtain and retain water and nutrients, support themselves, transport materials, and reproduce. Okay, that is the reading for today. At some point this week, we may have a Google Slides presentation talking about some notes that are just going to go over what, same thing I'm going to read there. Tomorrow, I believe we're going to get to, classifying plants. So we're going to talk about what are the characteristics of different types of plants, because not all plants are the same. There's ones that are vascular and non-vascular. There are seedless plants that reproduce without seeds, and there are plants that are seeded plants that reproduce with seeds, and there's a big variety of plants. So we're going to talk about that starting tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, guys.